My son-in-law boasted that my signature put my entire life savings under his control. He didn't know that my signature also included the authority to use the property rights he ignored to evict him and my daughter at midnight. Before continuing, write where you are from or what time it is. The words hit me like a misplaced hammer blow, straight through the quiet satisfaction of a Thursday afternoon. "Old man, now we'll be in charge of your savings and pension," my son-in-law Scott said, triumph lighting up his face. I just managed a tight smile, pretending agreement, letting him and my daughter Chelsea rush off to celebrate the victory they thought they'd already won. I knew better. I wasn't smiling because I agreed. I was smiling because I had already refused to be their victim. I pulled into the driveway at 2:30, still thinking about the cabinet joints my friend Marcus had shown at the woodworking guild meeting. The February sun hit the windshield hard, making me squint. Scott's truck sat where it shouldn't. He usually worked late. Chelsea's sedan blocked the garage. A knot tightened in my chest. It wasn't alarm yet, just a cold recognition. The front door opened before I reached the handle. Chelsea stood there with her careful smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes. She was dressed up, makeup, earrings, the full performance. "Victor, perfect timing. Come in. We need to talk." The air in the house felt wrong, too clean, too quiet, like a stage set for a play I hadn't rehearsed. Coffee cups sat arranged on the dining room table like props. Scott sat at the head of the table, my seat, with stacks of documents fanned out before him like a winning poker hand. In the living room doorway, a woman I didn't know stood clutching a briefcase. Her expression was caught between professional and deeply uncomfortable. "Victor, this is Ms. Miller." "She's a notary," Scott said, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. "We've been working on something important for your protection." I stayed standing, forcing myself to count the papers and estimate their purpose. Protection from what? Chelsea touched my elbow, a gentle pressure guiding me toward the chair. "From complications, Dad. Legal complications if something happened and nobody could access your accounts." "Nothing's happened," I said, sinking into the chair. "Not yet," Scott countered. His smile was tight, pulled too far at the edges. "But you're 70. Things happen. Chelsea and I consulted an attorney. A power of attorney is the smart move." The notary, Ms. Miller, shifted her weight and looked down at the floor. I sat down, not because they'd convinced me, but because the setup was too complete. What was in motion wouldn't be stopped by standing. They had planned this ambush while I was talking about dovetail joints with men who'd known me for 30 years. "Show me," I commanded. Scott slid the thick document across the table. Chelsea poured coffee I didn't want into a cup I didn't need. The language was comprehensive. Full financial authority, all bank accounts, investment portfolios, pension deposits. My eyes caught what wasn't there. No property transfer, no title changes. The house, my $850,000 house, remained mine. I read slowly, deliberately, letting them watch me read. Scott's wrist caught the light. A new Rolex, maybe $5,000, more than his sporadic contractor work could fund. On the coffee table sat a Porsche Cayenne brochure, folded open to a circled price, $89,000. Chelsea's handbag, designer leather with that unmistakable logo, hung on her chair. New. Expensive. "You understand what this authorizes?" The notary's voice was thin, legally required. "Financial power of attorney." "And you're signing voluntarily." I looked at Chelsea. 2 years she'd lived here since her mother died. 2 years of home-cooked dinners and concerned questions about my health. The pattern crystallized, gradually controlling my mail, suggesting I skip the woodworking guild when I seemed tired, monitoring my phone calls. This wasn't sudden greed. This was the harvest after long cultivation. Do I have a choice? "Of course you do." Scott leaned forward, dangerously earnest. "But fighting this, refusing, that would damage relationships forever. Chelsea just wants to help. We both do." The threat was clear in the space between his words. "Sign or lose your daughter completely." I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. I signed Victor Hayes in the careful script my mother taught me 65 years ago. The notary stamped, witnessed, dated, done. Scott and Chelsea exchanged a fleeting glance. Masks dropped long enough for me to see the calculation, the triumph, the clear victory underneath. "We're going out to celebrate," Chelsea said, already reaching for her coat. "Morton's downtown. You should rest, Dad. Big day." "Celebrating what exactly?" Scott laughed too loud. "Getting your affairs in order, finally having everything protected." They changed quickly from their staged intervention costumes into dinner clothes. Their excitement leaked out with every hurried word. Chelsea checked her makeup in the hall mirror. Scott jangled his keys. "Don't wait up." Chelsea kissed my forehead. Mechanical affection. "We might be late." I watched them leave. Scott's hand was on Chelsea's waist, proprietary. Their voices carried through the closed door. Laughter, relief, and plans. The notary gathered her briefcase. "Do you need anything, Mr. Hayes?" "No, thank you for coming." She hesitated. "You seemed very clear about what you were signing." "I was clear," I replied. She left. I sat alone at my dining room table, document copies scattered like evidence at a crime scene. The celebration they were having, steakhouse, wine, probably that $89,000 Porsche conversation, should have been my warning. But I already knew. I moved to my study, opened my laptop, and started searching. Southwest State Power of Attorney property rights, then revoking Power of Attorney Southwest State, then elder financial abuse documentation. The anger would come later. Right now, I needed information. By 11 p.m., I had filled 6 pages with notes. The POA gave them financial access. They could withdraw money, transfer funds, access accounts. But they couldn't sell my property, couldn't claim ownership, couldn't evict me from my own home. They had won a battle, not the war. I pulled a fresh notebook, writing one line at the top. Power of attorney does not grant residential rights. Then I went to find boxes. The cardboard boxes lined my hallway like soldiers at attention. 6 of them, labeled in black marker with the methodical precision I'd learned building houses for 40 years. I sat in my living room armchair, lights off, waiting. Their voices reached me before their keys hit the lock. Chelsea's laugh was high and bright. Scott was saying something about finally being in control, loud enough to carry through the walls and windows. 12:17 a.m. by the mantel clock. The front door swung open. Chelsea fumbled for the light switch. They froze. "You're leaving tomorrow." I kept my voice level, hands folded in my lap. "Noon deadline." Scott blinked at the boxes, then at me. Slow comprehension, thick with wine, spread across his face. "What?" "Chelsea, personal items." "Scott, personal items." I gestured to each box. "I've packed everything. You'll need to collect the rest by noon." Chelsea's mouth opened, then closed. Her makeup was smudged, the remnants of her celebration. "Dad, what are you doing?" "Don't call me that." I heard the words come out colder than I'd intended. "You lost that right when you staged today's ambush." Scott laughed, disbelief laced with wine. "You're joking, Dad. Come on, read Section 4, Paragraph 2. I unfolded my copy of the Power of Attorney from the side table, pointing to the specific language I'd highlighted. The POA grants you financial authority. It doesn't grant property rights. This house is titled in my name. It remains in my name. Your tenants at will, and I'm terminating your tenancy. "That's not how this works." Scott's voice rose, rough at the edges. "That's exactly how it works. Consult your attorney if you disagree." He stepped forward, close enough that I could smell the wine and steak on his breath. "You can't throw us out. We have the power of attorney." I didn't flinch. I stayed seated, immovable. "Financial access isn't residential rights. Take the boxes. Be gone by noon." 2 years. Scott's control cracked completely. 2 years we lived here with you. I had already frozen the last of my anger into something useful. Nothing he said could touch me. The bank website loaded at 8:00 a.m., and I discovered they hadn't waited for morning to start the theft. The air in the living room thickened, heavy with wine and Scott's broken composure. Chelsea grabbed his arm. "Scott, stop." No, he should know. Scott shook her off. His face, stripped of the careful mask he'd worn for 24 months, was pure rage. "You think we wanted this, in this house? Listening to your stories about construction projects? Nobody cares about 2 years of pretending we gave a single damn about your health, your day, your boring life." The truth landed with cold clarity, but no pain. I had already moved past that during the 6 hours they spent celebrating. I see those accounts, that pension, that's payment for putting up with you. Chelsea was crying now. I couldn't tell if the tears were real or rehearsed. Scott's drunk. He doesn't mean it. He means every word, so do you. That's not fair. I'm your daughter. I love you. You love my bank account. There's a difference. She tried the tactics that had worked for 38 years, the trembling voice, the little girl plea that used to shatter my defenses. After everything I've done, how can you say that? Everything you did was calculated, I told her. I see that now. Scott slumped against the wall, his fight draining into exhausted anger. Where are we supposed to go? That's not my concern. It's midnight. You have 12 hours. Use them wisely. They stumbled off to the guest room, the room I'd given them when Chelsea claimed she couldn't bear living alone after her mother's death. I heard them arguing through the walls, blame shifting between them like a hot coal neither wanted to hold. I didn't sleep. I sat in my study reading Ms. Monroe's contact information from the Woodworking Guild directory. She specialized in elder law. Her office opened at 8 a.m. I called at 7:15 a.m., leaving a message for an urgent consultation. She called back at 7:45 a.m. Mr. Hayes, Ms. Monroe, your message said urgent. I signed a power of attorney yesterday under pressure. My daughter and son-in-law. I need to revoke it. A brief pause followed. A professional assessment happening in the silence. Can you come in today 2 p.m.? I'll be there. The locksmith arrived at 8:30 a.m. Chelsea and Scott were throwing clothes into suitcases, making frantic phone calls about hotels and rentals. The locksmith worked efficiently, changing the front door, the back door, and the garage locks. He didn't ask questions about the obvious family crisis. My neighbor, Mr. Patel, watched from his driveway, coffee cup in hand. Our eyes met. I nodded once. He nodded back. Witness noted. By 10 a.m., new locks gleamed on every entrance. I knocked on the guest room door. Your keys? Scott yanked the door open, his face pale and eyes bloodshot. They work until noon, then they don't. He snatched the keys from my hand. You're making a mistake, old man. The mistake was trusting you. They loaded their truck in bitter silence. Boxes, suitcases, the expensive items they'd accumulated while living rent-free. At 11:40 a.m., they were gone. The house felt larger, emptier, cleaner. I drove downtown to Miss Monroe's office, a modern building, a modest suite on the 3rd floor. Diplomas covered the wall, a Southwest State law degree, elder law certifications. She was 52, sharply dressed, with eyes that calculated while she listened. I told her everything, the ambush, the notary, Scott's drunken confession, the eviction. She took notes without interrupting. You signed this yesterday? Yes, under pressure. Did they threaten you? Not explicitly. The setup implied that refusing would be irrational. The notary was waiting. The documents were ready. The message was clear. Cooperate or be labeled incompetent. That may constitute duress. She pulled out a legal pad. In Southwest State, we can file to revoke a POA if signed under coercion or without full understanding. But first, have they accessed your accounts? I don't know. I tried checking online last night, but the bank website was down for maintenance. Her expression sharpened. Check now. Use your phone. I logged into my banking app. The screen loaded. My stomach went cold. Recent transactions appeared. 3 withdrawals. Yesterday afternoon, within 2 hours of the signing, $5,000, $8,000, $12,000, $25,000 gone. Ms. Monroe photographed my phone screen. That's our evidence. They moved immediately. Now we move faster. She handed me a folder. Template documents for POA revocation, Southwest State statutes on elder financial abuse, her cell number handwritten on her business card. File the revocation Monday morning. Document every interaction. Save texts, emails, voicemails. If they threaten you, record it. Southwest State is a one-party consent state. Build the case brick by brick. How long does this take? Depends on whether they fight. But Mr. Hayes, she met my eyes directly. They will fight back. Be prepared. I left her office carrying the manila folder like a shield. The battle lines were drawn. $25,000 stolen. But I still had the house, still had my clarity, still had my anger, frozen into something harder and more useful. I drove home, planning my next moves with the same methodical precision I'd used designing foundations. This foundation would hold. The bank website loaded at 8 a.m. Saturday morning. I'd been awake since 6 a.m. Ms. Monroe's manila folders were spread across the kitchen table like battle plans. I clicked on my savings account. The balance froze me mid-breath. 40 years of construction work, every careful deposit, every delayed vacation. The account that should have shown $200,000 now read $115,000, $85,000 gone. I clicked transaction history. 3 withdrawals, 3 days, $35,000 on Wednesday, the day after I signed, $30,000 Thursday, $20,000 Friday. My hands shook holding the mouse. I called the weekend customer service number. The representative's sympathy couldn't change reality. Sir, the withdrawals were legally authorized under the power of attorney documentation filed February 15th. I see you've submitted revocation paperwork, but can you reverse them? I cannot reverse completed transactions. I can freeze the accounts to prevent future withdrawals. Freeze everything. That will temporarily freeze your access as well until the revocation processes. Are you certain? The answer stuck in my throat. My own accounts locked because my daughter had legal authority to steal from them. I'm certain. I called Ms. Monroe's cell. She answered on the second ring. Victor, they took $85,000. Silence stretched between us. Then I'll meet you at my office 11 a.m. I realized as I packed my printed statements that Scott's next move would be to try and take my reputation. Ms. Monroe, dressed in a weekend blazer, looked sharp despite the setting. We spread my printed bank statements across her conference table. She highlighted each withdrawal with yellow marker. 3 days, $85,000. Can we get it back? She set down the marker. Legally, yes, we can pursue it. Practically, that depends on whether they still have it. What do you mean? Money is liquid, Victor. They could have spent it, transferred it to accounts we can't trace, hidden it. Even if we win a judgment, ordering them to return it, collecting might be difficult. So, they just get away with it? No. We fight, she answered, reading my thought. But you need to understand this will take time, cost money, and have no guarantees. I drove home through streets decorated for holidays I wouldn't celebrate. I pulled a 3-ring binder from my closet, bought sheet protectors at the drugstore, and started organizing everything. Bank statements first, then Miss Monroe's notes, the POA document, printed emails, every interaction documented, every theft highlighted, every lie preserved. This was how I maintained control when everything felt chaotic. Tuesday brought legal papers. Scott's attorney claimed 2 years of caregiving services, 3,000 hours at $15 hourly, justifying $45,000 in compensation. Absurd mathematics covering naked theft. Ms. Monroe's response was surgical. She attached evidence I'd provided, utility bills, property tax statements, grocery receipts. I had paid every household expense while they lived here, $4,500 monthly for 24 months, totaling $18,000 in free housing and living expenses. They hadn't cared for me. I'd subsidized them. Wednesday, my cousin Patricia called from California. Victor, honey, Chelsea sent an email. She's worried about you. I'm fine, Patricia. She says you're having memory problems, that you accused her of stealing when she was just helping with your finances. Did she mention the $85,000 she withdrew without asking? Silence. I'm not losing my memory, Patricia. I'm losing my patience with thieves, even when they're related. Other calls followed. Chelsea had distributed her narrative widely. Elderly father, declining mind, ungrateful paranoia. People who should have known me believed her version. Thursday evening, following Ms. Monroe's advice, I pulled my credit report. 6 hard inquiries the week after the POA signing. 3 mortgage lenders, 2 home equity companies, 1 reverse mortgage outfit. They tried to borrow against my house. My fully paid $850,000 house. The applications were rejected. The POA didn't authorize property encumbrance, but they tried. They wanted everything. Friday, an investigator from Adult Protective Services, APS, called. Professional, overworked, realistic. Mr. Hayes, I'm opening an investigation based on your attorney's complaint. However, these financial cases are complex and take time. The process typically takes 3 to 6 months. 3 to 6 months. We can refer to law enforcement if we find criminal activity, but we can't order them to return money, she added. Justice moved like concrete setting, slow, inevitable, but frustratingly slow. That night, I sat alone with my evidence binder, pages of highlighted theft, proof of calculated plunder. Scott's text from earlier glowed on my phone. You'll regret this. We'll take everything in court. I saved it. Screenshot, timestamp added to documentation. Doubt crept in. This was my daughter, the child I'd raised, sent to college. Maybe I was being vindictive. No. I stopped that spiral, opening the binder to the bank statements. $35,000, $30,000, $20,000. Not caregiving expenses. Theft. They'd made their choice, calculated and complete. Now I'd make mine. The official bank statement arrived in Saturday's mail. Thick envelope. February's transactions printed in official format. I sat at my dining table, laptop open, Ms. Monroe on speakerphone. Read me the February 16th transaction. Wire transfer, $12,000 to Majestic Getaways Travel. The day after the POA was signed. What's the transaction description say? Cancun resort package, 2 travelers. Ms. Monroe's pause held weight. They bought a vacation to Mexico with your retirement savings the day after getting your power of attorney. We can work with this, Victor. I created a spreadsheet. Date, amount, merchant, category. Each transaction itemized. $12,000 to luxury travel, $8,500 to Tiffany jewelry, $18,000 to Desert Luxury auto sales, none of it for my care, all personal indulgence. I called the travel agency explaining the legal dispute. After verification, the agent confirmed 2 first-class tickets, all-inclusive resort, Chelsea and Scott. Departure, February 20th. Could you email me written confirmation? The documentation arrived within an hour. I printed it, 3-hole punched it, and added it to the binder. Tiffany provided a receipt showing Chelsea bought a diamond bracelet. The auto dealer confirmed Scott made a down payment on a 2024 Lexus. Each vendor supplied proof, transforming bank statement entries into concrete evidence of luxury spending funded by theft. Sunday afternoon, I walked next door. Mr. Patel was raking leaves from his immaculate lawn. Over coffee in his kitchen, I explained the situation. I saw the whole thing that night, Mr. Patel said. Your son-in-law was out of control. Would you be willing to put that in writing for a formal statement? My attorney will draft something. It would help. Victor, you've been a good neighbor for 15 years. If your family is stealing from you, I'll say what I saw. Nobody should face that alone. Monday morning, I drove to a home security store. I bought a Ring doorbell camera system with motion detection and cloud recording. I installed it myself. 40 years building houses meant installing a doorbell camera was simple. Ms. Monroe had predicted, they'll come back, they won't be able to resist. When they do, you'll have video proof. Wednesday night, 11:47 p.m. My phone buzzed. Motion alert. I opened the app from bed. Scott's truck in my driveway. Scott approaching my door trying the handle. Locked. He pounded with his fist. The camera captured his face clearly, angry, possibly drunk. I know you're in there, Victor. You can't hide forever. That money is ours. I watched from my phone as he shouted, kicked the door, and finally left. 3 minutes of video automatically saved to cloud storage. Perfect evidence, time-stamped, high-def, self-incriminating. Thursday brought a process server, and I knew Scott had made his next move. The new war was for my mind. The process server handed me a legal petition. I read it standing in my doorway, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Chelsea's attorney had filed a petition for emergency guardianship. Respondent has demonstrated significant cognitive decline, including paranoid ideation, impaired judgment, and inability to manage financial affairs. My daughter wasn't just stealing my money. She was trying to have me declared incompetent, stealing my independence, my dignity, my legal rights. Ms. Monroe's voice was tight when I called. It's a strategic move. If she can get guardianship, she controls everything. But Victor, she's made a mistake. This requires a psychiatric evaluation, and you are going to pass it. Dr. Eleanor Wright's office occupied the third floor of a medical building. She was 60, gray-haired, professionally neutral. The evaluation lasted 3 hours. Memory tests, recall lists of words, draw a clock, count backward from 100 by sevens, reasoning problems. Mr. Hayes, why are you here today? My daughter filed a petition claiming I'm mentally incompetent. I'm here to prove I'm not. I told her everything. The POA, the $85,000 withdrawn, the eviction, and the guardianship petition. How does that make you feel? Betrayed, angry, sad, but not confused. I understand exactly what happened. I'd prepared thoroughly, bringing documents showing my activities, woodworking guild minutes, home repair invoices, correspondence. I wasn't just passing the evaluation, I was acing it. 3 days later, Ms. Monroe called with the results. Victor, I have Dr. Wright's report, complete vindication, no cognitive impairment, excellent mental status, appropriate judgment. She's recommending denial of the guardianship petition. My exhale felt like releasing pressure I hadn't known I was holding. So, it's over. That threat is over. But Victor, you understand what your daughter tried to do. She attempted to have you declared incompetent and stripped of your legal rights. I know, this isn't just about money anymore. That evening, I sat with the report on my coffee table. Official validation that I was competent and rational. My daughter had tried to take everything, money, house, freedom, identity, and failed. But the victory felt hollow. The evidence binder had grown thick with proof of theft and betrayal. Each page documented another piece of the daughter I'd lost. 2 weeks before the hearing, I sat across from Ms. Monroe. Evidence exhibits covered the table. Bank statements, receipts, Mr. I. Patel's witness statement, the security camera footage on a thumb drive. My 3-ring binder anchored one corner like a foundation stone. The judge will ask why you signed if you felt pressured, Ms. Monroe reminded me. You need to answer clearly, without emotion. I signed because refusing seemed impossible in that moment. Better, but explain why it seemed impossible. I practiced the answer until the words felt smooth. I signed because they made it clear that refusing meant losing my relationship with my daughter forever. They made it seem like the only rational choice. Early March, the Central District Court building rose, concrete and glass, against the morning sky. I arrived at courtroom 4B at 8:30 a.m. Ms. Monroe waited outside, reviewing notes. At 8:45 a.m., Chelsea and Scott arrived with their attorney, Douglas Mitchell. Scott wore a suit I'd never seen. Chelsea's eyes were red, prepared for the performance. We sat on opposite sides of the hallway, didn't speak, didn't acknowledge each other. Judge Patricia Morrison called the case at 9 a.m. sharp, in the matter of Hayes' power of attorney revocation. Ms. Monroe delivered her opening with surgical precision. Victor signed under duress. The POA was immediately exploited. Evidence will show predatory financial abuse. Douglas Mitchell countered, Victor was a controlling father fabricating claims to punish his daughter for seeking independence. The battle lines were drawn. I took the stand at 9:30 a.m. Ms. Monroe guided me through February 15th, finding them waiting with the notary. When did you realize it was a mistake? The moment I saw their faces after I signed. They looked triumphant, not relieved, triumphant. Douglas Mitchell's cross-examination tried to shake me. Mr. Hayes, isn't it possible you simply forgot giving your daughter permission? I didn't forget. I was never asked. You evicted your daughter over a misunderstanding, didn't you? I evicted her after discovering she'd stolen $85,000. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a crime. His aggression made him look like a bully. I stayed calm, kept eye contact with the judge. Ms. Monroe presented the evidence methodically. A poster board timeline showed the withdrawals. February 15th, POA signed. 16th, first withdrawal. 17th, 18th. She held up bank statements with yellow highlighting. This $12,000 charge. What was this for? A vacation to Cancun. They bought it the day after getting my power of attorney. The security camera footage played on the courtroom monitor. Scott pounding my door at midnight. His voice filled the quiet room. "Open up, old man. You can't hide forever." Chelsea stared straight ahead. Scott looked down at the table. The afternoon session brought the critical evidence. Ms. Monroe introduced the notary's contemporaneous notes. She read aloud. Senior appeared uncomfortable and hesitant during signing. Family members were present and actively encouraging signature. Circumstances felt pressured. Judge Morrison took notes, nodding. Chelsea took the stand at 2:45 p.m., confident she could sway the judge with tears. She cried, claiming she was trying to help her aging father, saying the withdrawals were misunderstandings. Ms. Monroe's cross-examination was devastating. "Ms. Hayes, you testified that $12,000 was for family expenses. Who traveled to Cancun?" "Scott and I did." "Not your father?" "No, but we needed a vacation." "Paid for with your father's stolen money?" Ms. Monroe displayed a photo Chelsea had posted online. The Tiffany bracelet captioned, "Treating myself." "And this $8,000 bracelet. Whose emergency was that?" Chelsea's voice dropped to a whisper. "It was a gift for myself." "With your father's money without his knowledge or permission?" "I thought I had authority." "You had authority to manage his finances for his benefit, not to buy yourself jewelry. You knew that, didn't you?" No answer. Judge Morrison delivered her ruling at 3:30 p.m. She didn't need extended deliberation. The power of attorney is revoked effective immediately. The evidence demonstrates it was signed under psychological duress and immediately exploited for personal gain rather than the principal's benefit. She looked sternly at Chelsea and Scott. Furthermore, respondents are ordered to return $85,000 to Victor Hayes within 60 days. Failure to comply will result in contempt proceedings and referral to the Central District Attorney for criminal prosecution under Southwest State's Elder Financial Abuse statutes. Outside the courthouse, Ms. Monroe tempered my relief. "They owe you $85,000. Actually getting it is the next battle. They've already spent most of it. Be prepared for them to fight collection." I understood. Legal victory didn't guarantee financial recovery, but I'd won. The POA was revoked. Chelsea's guardianship petition was denied. The judge had called it what it was: exploitation. I drove home, processing vindication mixed with exhaustion. 60 days. The countdown began. 2 weeks passed. 45 days remained on the deadline. I'd received no communication, no payment, no acknowledgement. I called Ms. Monroe from my home office. "They're ignoring it." "Then we enforce. I'm filing for asset seizure this afternoon. They bought things with your money. We'll take those things back." I almost broke, remembering Chelsea's tears, but Ms. Monroe's report soon confirmed there was no daughter left to save. Ms. Monroe's paralegal ran comprehensive searches. DMV records showed a 2024 Lexus ES350 registered to Chelsea on February 18th, 3 weeks before the hearing. Purchase price, $47,000 from Desert Luxury Auto Sales. They'd known a judgment was coming, trying to convert cash into an asset. Ms. Monroe filed the seizure motion immediately. Judge Morrison's order came back within 2 days. Vehicle seized to satisfy judgment. Sheriff authorized to execute. The next morning, a sheriff's deputy and tow truck arrived at Chelsea and Scott's apartment. Chelsea was at work. Scott was home. Within an hour, Scott drove to my house in his old pickup. He parked in my driveway, started shouting from the sidewalk, "Victor, get out here. You took Chelsea's car. She needs that for work." I watched through the living room window, silent. Mr. Patel came out next door, watching. Mrs. Rodriguez across the street called the police. Scott's shouting continued. Incoherent rage about unfairness, vindictiveness, family betrayal. 2 Scottsdale officers arrived 15 minutes later. Officer Martinez was calm and clear. "Sir, there's a valid court order for that seizure. It's legal. Now, I see you've been warned before about harassing Mr. Hayes. You need to leave this property immediately." "Or what?" "Or I arrest you for criminal trespass and harassment. Leave now or leave in handcuffs." Scott left, tires squealing. Officer Martinez took my statement, documenting the incident. The next afternoon, Chelsea came alone. First direct contact since the hearing. She rang the doorbell standing on my porch, looking genuinely distressed. Makeup smeared, eyes red, clothes rumpled. I opened the door slightly. The chain still latched. "Dad, please, just 5 minutes." "What do you want, Chelsea?" Her prepared speech tumbled out. Scott manipulated her. She never wanted any of this. She's my daughter and deserves another chance. The car seizure destroyed them financially. Looking at her crying, I felt the parental instinct war with justified anger. She's my daughter. I raised her. Part of me wanted to believe her, to fix this. My hand moved toward the chain lock. Then the memory flashed. Her cold smile after the POA signing, the guardianship petition calling me incompetent, the $85,000 gone in 3 days. The manipulation became obvious. These tears were tactics. I spoke firmly through the chain door. "Chelsea, if you're truly sorry, prove it. You have 40 days to return the money. Bring me a check for $42,000. Show me through actions, not words. Then we'll discuss forgiveness." Her tears stopped instantly, like a faucet shut off. Her expression shifted. Pleading victim became angry adversary. $42,000. We don't have that. You know we don't. You're just being cruel. You had $85,000 2 months ago. My $85,000. You spent it. That's not my problem. I closed the door, watching through the window as she stood motionless, then stormed to her car and drove away fast. 3 days later, the Lexus sold at sheriff's auction for $43,000. After fees, $42,700 was deposited into my account. Ms. Monroe sent an updated statement. Original theft $85,000, recovered $42,700, outstanding $40,300, remaining time 37 days. Her note warned they likely cannot pay the remainder. Prepare for contempt proceedings and possible criminal referral. I updated my accounting spreadsheet. $85,000 stolen, $43,000 recovered, $42,000 still owed. Full restitution seemed unlikely. They had 37 days to produce $42,000 or face jail time. 3 weeks after the Lexus seizure, my phone rang. Ms. Monroe's voice carried an urgency I hadn't heard before. "The APS investigation uncovered something. Can you come to my office this afternoon?" "You need to see these documents." I drove downtown, wondering what new development could warrant that tone. The civil case was essentially over. In Ms. Monroe's conference room, Sarah Chen from APS spread printed emails across the table like crime scene photographs. "Mr. Hayes, we subpoenaed Scott Turner's email account. What we found transforms this from civil dispute to criminal conspiracy." She picked up the first email. May 12th, shifted date, 2 days after they'd moved into my house. From Scott Turner to Marcus Webb. Subject line: consultation needed regarding family financial situation. My stomach went cold. Sarah Chen read the excerpts. May 12th. I need advice on accessing my father-in-law's accounts. He's 70, has substantial savings, but won't discuss finances with us. Webb's response: first step is establishing trust and dependency. Move into his residence if possible. Makes you indispensable. May 20th. We moved in last week. How do we progress? Webb: gradual isolation from outside influences. Redirect his social contacts through you. Make him reliant on your judgment. Each email triggered memories I dismissed as coincidence. Scott suggesting I skip the woodworking guild. Chelsea starting to help with my mail. Scott answering my phone when my friend Leonard called and never delivering the message. Controlled isolation. I thought they cared. Sarah Chen reached the February emails. Need to move forward with the power of attorney. Timeline. Webb responded, don't rush. Build pressure gradually. Make it seem inevitable, like the only reasonable choice. Have the notary ready. Don't give him time to think. February 10th. Everything set for the 15th. Notary scheduled, documents prepared. He won't see it coming. Clinical planning, calculated exploitation. I wasn't their father, I was their target. Ms. Monroe produced different emails. Chelsea to her friend Kimberly. October 18th, shifted date. Scott and I are working on accessing Dad's accounts. He's sitting on almost $750,000 while we struggle. It's not fair. October 25th. Scott found someone who explained how to do this legally. Power of attorney. Once we have it, we can finally get what we deserve. The friend warned her. Are you sure? That sounds risky. Chelsea's response, Dad won't even notice, he's getting old anyway. Sarah Chen closed the folders. Mr. Hayes, Southwest state law classifies planned financial exploitation of vulnerable adults as a Class 2 felony under ARS 4646. These emails demonstrate months of planning, consultation about exploitation tactics, deliberate psychological manipulation. This is criminal fraud. The Central District Attorney will file charges within 2 weeks. She added that Marcus Webb was already on their radar for coaching similar schemes. I sat silently, staring at the emails, my daughter's address at the top of messages discussing me like a business opportunity. Victor, are you okay? Ms. Monroe's voice was gentle. I knew they stole from me. I knew they manipulated me. I managed. But they planned it for months. Every conversation was calculated. I wasn't their father. I was their mark. My voice sounded flat, but my hands shook. I left Ms. Monroe's office at 5 p.m., carrying copies of the emails. I sat in my driveway for 10 minutes after parking, engine off, staring at nothing. Inside, I dropped the copies on the dining table next to my spreadsheet. Getting old anyway. Not just theft, not just manipulation, but months of calculated targeting, discussed with consultants, executed with precision. Every dinner conversation, every offer to help. Tactical moves in a scheme that started before they'd even unpacked their boxes. I filled 2 pages with notes, mapping the isolation tactics I now recognized. Missed phone messages, discouraged outings, intercepted mail, manufactured concern about my tiredness. Each one a manipulation I dismissed as caring attention. The betrayal was complete. Criminal charges were coming. Prison was possible. She was still my daughter. But she'd stopped being my family months before I'd realized it. I stared at the email, realizing the woman who wrote it had never been my daughter. 2 weeks later, Ms. Monroe called at 8:30 in the morning. The criminal charges were filed yesterday. Chelsea and Scott were both arraigned this morning on Class 2 felony elder financial abuse. And there's more. She paused, letting the magnitude of the statement sink in. Douglas Mitchell withdrew as their attorney. Conflict of interest. They're blaming each other already. Within days, the fractures became visible. Scott's public defender approached the prosecutor with a deal. Scott would testify against Chelsea, claiming she'd masterminded everything, manipulated him through their marriage, and pressured him into compliance. He provided text messages where Chelsea discussed the plan, demanding he get the money faster. Chelsea responded through her new attorney, Melissa Hardgrove, with secret recordings. She'd been documenting Scott since before my eviction. The audio captured Scott planning and gloating. We're going to squeeze every penny out of the old man. He won't know what hit him. $300 grand is sitting there. We just need to grab it. Neither deserved mercy at the other's expense. A week after the arraignment, Ms. Monroe arranged a meeting with Assistant County Attorney Laura Sandoval. Her office occupied the 4th floor of the county building. Utilitarian furniture, case files stacked everywhere, conviction statistics framed on the wall. Laura Sandoval was 42, sharp, and experienced in financial crimes. She spread both sets of evidence across her desk, Scott's texts and Chelsea's recordings. Mr. Hayes, they're both guilty. The email evidence proves joint planning and execution. I'm not playing their blame game. She leaned back in her chair. But I'm also practical. Trials are expensive and uncertain. I'm offering both the same plea bargain. Then she asked directly, do you want your daughter to go to prison? I sat silently. Ms. Monroe didn't prompt me. This was my choice. I want justice. I want my money back. I want them held accountable. I paused, choosing words carefully. But if accountability can happen without prison, through probation, restitution, public record, I can accept that. She's still my daughter, even after everything. Laura Sandoval nodded. Then I'll structure the plea around full restitution and supervised probation. No prison if they comply. Prison if they violate probation. 2 days later, I attended a pre-trial hearing. It was routine legal business, but Chelsea and Scott were both present. They sat on opposite sides of the courtroom. When Scott passed Chelsea's table, he muttered something. I didn't catch it, but Chelsea did. She stood abruptly. You're the one who contacted Marcus Webb. This whole thing was your idea." Her attorney tried to quiet her. Scott's attorney stepped forward. The judge threatened both with contempt if they couldn't behave professionally. I watched this public breakdown with mixed feelings. Bitter satisfaction, maybe. They were getting a taste of betrayal from each other. After the hearing, Laura Sandoval presented identical plea offers to both attorneys. Plead guilty to Class 4 felony elder financial abuse. Pay full restitution of $42,000 within 6 months. 3 years supervised probation. 200 hours community service. Mandatory elder abuse prevention program. No contact with me. Refuse the offer and face trial with potential 2 to 3 year prison sentences. 1 week to decide. Ms. Monroe mentioned casually later, "Did you know Chelsea filed for divorce last week?" I didn't. She showed me the public record. Chelsea Hayes versus Scott Turner, citing irreconcilable differences in criminal conduct of respondent. Scott signed the acknowledgement within 24 hours. Their marriage lasted 2 years. How much was genuine? How much was criminal partnership? I had no answer. The deadline was Friday. 4 days remained for them to choose. Accept accountability and avoid prison or gamble on trial. I sat at home checking my phone periodically for updates. Scott's attorney requested a deadline extension, denied. Chelsea's attorney asked for a modified restitution schedule under consideration. They'd spent months planning to exploit me. Now they were isolated from each other, desperate, broke, facing prison. The scheme was consuming itself from within. Justice, perhaps, but bitter justice. My daughter was one of the people facing these consequences. That reality never stopped hurting. 4 days until the deadline. I waited to see which way they would break. Friday morning, 7:30 a.m. My phone rang while I sat at the kitchen table, coffee growing cold. "Victor," they accepted. Both of them signed the plea offer this morning. The formal hearing is this afternoon at 2 p.m. It's done. Done. My daughter would stand in court and plead guilty to a felony. I drove to the courthouse at 1:30 p.m., taking the elevator to the 4th floor, courtroom 4B, the same room where the civil case was decided months ago. Chelsea and Scott stood before Judge Morrison at separate podiums several feet apart, not looking at each other. Their attorneys flanked them like guards. Judge Morrison was formal, procedural. "You are charged with Class 4 felony financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult." "Miss Hayes, how do you plead?" Chelsea's voice barely carried. "Guilty, Your Honor." "I need to hear you clearly." "Guilty," louder this time. "Defeated." "Mr. Turner, same charge. How do you plead?" "Guilty, Your Honor." The judge accepted the plea, reviewing the terms. 3 years supervised probation, 200 hours community service, mandatory elder abuse rehabilitation program, no contact with Victor Hayes without written consent. I sat in the gallery, 3 rows back, hands folded. When the judge said guilty, my shoulders dropped. Tension I didn't know I was carrying finally released. Over the following week, Ms. Monroe kept me updated on their desperate scramble to raise the $42,000, the amount still owed after the Lexus recovery. They sold everything. The Tiffany bracelet went back to the jeweler for $6,500. Electronics sold on Facebook Marketplace for $2,800. Furniture to a secondhand dealer for $4,200. The math didn't add up. They were selling at fractions of purchase prices, raising maybe $15,000 total. Then came the final bitter twist. Scott's parents mortgaged their home in Tucson, providing $30,000 to keep their son out of prison. Ms. Monroe received the cashier's check the following week. "Full restitution paid," she told me over the phone. $42,000 plus the Lexus proceeds equals $85,000. "You're financially whole, Victor." Financially whole. The words felt hollow. Within days, consequences cascaded. Chelsea's employer terminated her. Quarterly background check revealed the felony conviction. Her marketing coordinator position, $38,000 annually, gone. Scott's sporadic contractor work dried up completely. Their apartment became unaffordable. They moved to a budget complex near 83rd Avenue, a rough neighborhood, a 1-bedroom unit for $950 monthly. The social death followed. Friends stopped calling. Chelsea's social media went silent, then disappeared entirely. They became pariahs. Early March brought a probation compliance hearing. I attended, not required, but I wanted to see the process working. As I left the courtroom, Chelsea stood in the hallway with her attorney. She saw me. She broke away from Melissa Hardgrove's restraining hand and stepped toward me. "I hope you're satisfied," her voice echoed in the marble corridor. People stopped, watched. "You've destroyed your only daughter. Was it worth your precious money?" I waited until she finished speaking, knowing the battle for her soul was about to end. I waited until Chelsea finished, then spoke calmly, projecting just enough to be heard above the murmur in the marble corridor. "Chelsea, I didn't destroy your life. You made choices to plan theft, to manipulate me, to steal money you didn't earn. Every consequence you're experiencing is the direct result of those choices. I simply refuse to be your victim." Her face crumpled, rage and pain mixing together. "If you want to blame someone, look in a mirror." Melissa Hardgrove pulled her away firmly. I turned toward the elevator, knowing those were the last words I'd ever speak to my daughter. That evening, I sat at my dining table with my laptop, the same table where this began 4 months earlier with the POA ambush. My spreadsheet showed the final accounting: $85,000 stolen, $43,000 recovered through Lexus sale, $42,000 restitution payment, total recovered $85,000, zero balance owed. The numbers balanced perfectly, but the cost column couldn't be quantified. A daughter lost, a family destroyed, a betrayal that could never be undone. I'd recovered every dollar. My house was mine alone. My accounts were secure. But sitting in the empty house that evening, I felt the weight of what victory had cost. Justice achieved, family destroyed. The spreadsheet showed financial recovery, but no spreadsheet could account for the losses that really mattered. I closed the laptop, sitting in silence, processing the hollow feeling of complete victory. 2 weeks later, mid-March, I woke on a Saturday morning to genuine peace. Not the tense silence of recent months, but actual quiet. I made coffee, took it to my back patio, and watched the sun rise over the desert mountains. No legal updates to check, no court dates pending, no crisis demanding attention. The battle was over. Thursday, I returned to the Woodworking Guild meeting for the first time since September, 7 months absent. When I entered the private room, Leonard waved me over. "Victor, where have you been?" "Family situation, it's resolved now." They understood the tone, didn't push. The conversation shifted to a commercial project debate. I contributed my opinion. Normal felt therapeutic. Leonard called later that week. We met for lunch at the Mexican restaurant. Over enchiladas, Leonard said, "I called you last October, left a message with Scott. You never called back." Another manipulation revealed. Even now, I never got that message. He was controlling communications. "It's over," I said. Leonard nodded. "Good. I missed our conversations." We talked about everything else. The friendship resumed without dwelling on trauma. Tuesday afternoon, Mr. Patel knocked on my door. We sat at my kitchen table with coffee. "I don't need details," Mr. Patel said carefully. "But you handled a difficult situation with integrity." "Thank you for the witness statement. It mattered." Mr. Patel waved it off. "Neighbors help neighbors. You did the right thing even when it was hard. The right choice isn't always the easy one." "No," I agreed. "But that's why integrity matters." Wednesday morning, Ms. Monroe's email arrived, showing me a consequence far wider than I had ever expected. Wednesday morning, Miss SIL. Monroe's email arrived. "Victor, thought you'd want to see this." The attached article from the Southwest Republic described an uptick in elder financial abuse prosecutions in the Central District. 3 new cases filed recently, all citing one case's successful outcome for encouraging other victims to report. One victim was quoted, "I was ashamed to report it. He's family, but reading about that other case showed me family doesn't excuse theft. I filed charges." My case, my fight, helping others find courage. I read it 3 times. My personal nightmare had meaning beyond myself. The suffering wasn't pointless. Thursday, I searched online for Grand Canyon lodges, found a small place on the South Rim, Booked a cabin for a week in April. I called Leonard. Remember you said you'd never been to the Grand Canyon? Want to go with me next month? He laughed. I'm 72. When else am I going to go? Yes. Planning felt like reclaiming life, choosing joy despite loss. Friday evening, I stood on my patio watching the sunset. The mountains turned gold, then purple, then dark. I was alone. Chelsea was gone, barred from contact, full of hatred. My wife was dead. My house was empty except for me. But I was standing in my own home, financially secure, legally victorious, dignity intact. I thought about the alternative. If I'd done nothing, they'd have taken everything eventually, drained my accounts, mortgaged my house, left me destitute. Fighting was brutal, but necessary. I chose justice over easy peace. As stars emerged in the Arizona sky, I remained on the patio, empty coffee cup in hand. I'd survived the worst betrayal imaginable, my only child deliberately exploiting me. The cost was immense. A daughter lost forever, family destroyed, trust shattered. But I kept my dignity, refused to be a victim, held them accountable, and recovered everything material. And somehow, my suffering helped others. 3 families protecting themselves because I showed it's possible to fight and win. The victory was hollow, but it was still victory. Justice was served, even if happiness wasn't restored. I turned and walked back into my house, my sanctuary, my peace, and closed the door. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you are here.